What's up, guys? I am just coming home from NAIC, the largest Pokemon TCG tournament in the history of the game, with almost 2,000 Masters TCG competitors, and I finished 49th place. I'm going to talk to you guys about my 60 card deck, which you guys can see in front of you, and my 15 rounds of tournament play, where I made mistakes, how I could have played better, and where, a tournament could be changed. There are some small, minuscule things you can always do better in a tournament, and that's what I want to help you guys learn as a player and go through with me in my journey. That does conclude my 2023 season, so I will be doing a 2023 season recap video down the line. Let me know if you guys want to see that in the comments below. I just wanted to say this year has been one of my best by far, and the support has been overwhelming. The sheer amount of people that have come up to me this weekend and just said that they've watched my content, they really appreciate what I do, all of those things was a lot. It was a lot of people. It was amazing. I have never felt this much support in my life, and it was really, really cool to have all that. So thank you guys for everything, all the kind words. You are the reason I do all of this, and without any of you, this would not be possible. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, that being said, let's jump into my 60 card list. So going into NAIC, I was there in Columbus all week, testing, and I was pretty sure that Gardevoir was on the top of my decks that I wanted to play. If I can't beat Gardevoir, I was going to play Gardevoir. And so I was testing matchups with Victor, who finished top 8 with his Lost Zone Box deck, Isaiah, John, who also wanted to play Lost Zone Box, Nico, who was full on Guardy, like a lot of us were testing, and then Reagan was Lugia. So we're testing, and as the week is whittling down, basically this is the 60 card list we ended up coming to, or I came to, with the group choosing to go with a penny over the second research, whereas I went with consistency with the second research, given how I had discussed with Nico that I think that's better. So shout out to Nico for that change. Shout out to Nico for, being so forceful that we need more consistency and just play for consistency. The penny probably would have saved me in 2 of my losses, but that being said, I don't know in which games the research actually bailed me out to play the game. Besides that, it's a very cut and dry Gardevoir list. I don't think there's anything special about it. 3 Candy, 2 Rod, 3 Crystal, 3 Ultra, 3 Level, 4 VIP, 1 of each Stadium for each respective purpose. I never really used Collapsed to full effect, I don't think. And I could have, though, in one of my losses, and I will get to that. I should have just dug deeper and actually played around the Collapsed play. I just kind of absentmindedly forgot. I got cocky, and that cost me a set, which in a tournament like NAIC could be your entire tournament, in which my case it was. 11 Psychic, 1 Reversal, 2 Boss, 1 Worker, 2 Research for Iono. A lot of consistency here. Technically 7 draw supporters, in addition to my entire core of a 4-4, 2-2 line, and then 1 of all my auxiliary support Pokemon that help out in individual matchups. Cresselia being for just random matchups, as well as specifically Lost Box. Zacian being for a big hitter to close out the game against some of those 2 prize decks, and Mew specifically. Manaphy being for Lost Box almost exclusively. Greninja just helping me set up, and Mew just being a great card. So that being said, let's jump into my round 1. Round 1 against Andy, who was playing Gardevoir. And Andy, in game 1, just didn't. I think he only got 2 Ralts down. I went first. I got 4 Ralts down into Curlia, Candy, Guardy, which is absolutely the most disgusting start I have ever had. No, I didn't get 2. I only got 1 Candy Guardy. And that game, I just kind of blew him out of the water. Game 2, I once again set up and got 4 Ralts down, and he only got 2 Ralts down again. And this is the game where he missed turn to attack. He had a 2-card hand. And he went Curlia, Refinement away, a Gardevoir, take his 2 cards, and pass. So his board then was, at the end of turn 2, Ralts, Curlia, I think Cresselia active, pass. And I went Evolve to Curlia. I went Evolve to Curlia, low ball for Curlia, slam the Research, Research into my 7, do Greninja, draw, take my 2, do my Curlia, take 2, do Curlia, take 2, use Mew, hit a Candy Guardy, Fog Crystal into Cresselia, or maybe I did the Cresselia part first, but then I got the turn 2 knockout on his lone Curlia, and that pretty much sealed the game, and I won the mirror that way. So I high rolled the mirror there, but that is the way you play the Gardevoir mirror. You use Cresselia to go after their Ralts and Curlias, and just pick them off until you're at a position where you can Iona them in a late game spot, or you can go for a boss play with your own baby Gardevoir and Reversal. If you are behind, if you are ahead, you can go for the Zacian play and just keep tempo on their big Gardevoir, because they do need to put the big Gardevoir back down. Round 2 was up against Mike Hines, and I remember both of these games I just set up super perfectly, and Mike really didn't. No, game one I actually had like a little bit of trouble. And I remember like, no, I rolled Mike game one. Game two, I was in a position where my Zacian had 200 damage on it. So I slowly moved damage counters off with Cresselia because Mike had been down 3 double turbo energies. And so I locked up an Alakazam in the active. Or the Radiant Gardevoir, sorry. Mike played Radiant Gardevoir. I locked it in the active and moved damage counters off of my Cresselia until there was very few left. 40 left specifically, and I was gonna then I had 4 prizes left, so then I had to go Iono to 1 for Mike, who had like a 8 or 9 card deck, retreat, knock out the Gardevoir, and then boss knock out one of the Umbreons on the bench, Umbreon VMAX on the bench. The turn I did, however, knock out the Alakazam and Iono him to 1. Mike did find the boss for the game, so we went to game 3, and in game 3, I was pretty convinced we were gonna tie. But I had like an insane start, and turn 2 I had knocked out an Arceus, which again, I probably was not the correct play, but because there was like 7 or 8 minutes on the clock, I was just trying to win the game because my setup was so good. And Mike's setup was so lackluster. I think he didn't get V-Star down turn 2 because I knocked out the lone Arceus, and then the game pretty much snowballed from there, and I won against Arctura. Round 3 it's Andre Scuball. In game 1, I pretty much got the turn 2 Candy Guardian into Cresselia play. With 3 Candy, it's actually a lot more likely than you think. However, in the Mew matchup, you can't, or in the Lost Box matchup, you can't put Mew down, which makes it a little bit more tricky in terms of like how you can set up your board. I kind of just went for it because I really didn't have, I think I prized Ralts, and I was like, you know what, like I'm just going to go for the Mew and put pressure on. And then it paid off. And then in game 2, Andre committed his Cramorant into the Lost Zone. I assume Turbo only plays 1 typically, so he couldn't put pressure on me early, and he went for the turn 2 Greninja play, and he whiffed by like an energy. And I remember his first Colress or something, he had to put 2 energy in the Lost Zone, and I was like, oh, that's not good. And so as soon as he whiffed that, I just kind of took a prize with Cresselia on my turn 2, and I Ionoed him, and I think he got the turn 2 Sableye, and then I knocked out the Sableye, but he had benched Drapion to use the Seal Stone. So then I just bossed a Drapion, took the prize, and then the game was over. And he just conceded. At one point, my board was quite literally Gardevoir, Gardevoir, Gardevoir. And he just conceded because he couldn't even Sableye anything the next turn. So I'm 3-0. I'll go against Noah. I'm going to pronounce your last name completely wrong, so I'm just not going to go for it. Noah played awesome. Noah was a lot of fun to talk to. Game 1, I was in a completely losing position, but I ended up bossing the Radiant Alakazam, playing Temple of Sinnoh, sticking it in the active, powering up my board the way I'm supposed to, using Cresselia to move damage counters off my board, and then going in to close out the game with a Zacian on his bench. 3 prizer, and I won the game that way, which definitely a sweater. I think I should have lost that for sure. I think Noah could have just committed the energies to like something else, and he would have won. Game 2, I tried for something similar because once again, I'm not setting up super well. So I'm trying to play from behind, and then Noah goes into retreating a DTE for the breaking swipe attack on the Duraludon. And then I boss up the Alakazam again, and I try to stick it there. And this time he does have the response Stadium plus DTE to get out of the active and one-shot me for game. And then game 3, I'm in a losing position once again. I prized 2 Ralts. Game 2, I prized Double Guard EX, by the way. Game 2, I prized Double Guard EX. So no, I knew I had to use Zacian early and try to make a play out of it, and it just didn't get there. Like, it just didn't make any sense for me to play that game out. And game 3, I prized Double Ralts, so I was already on the back foot once again. And I roared to and he lost City like a Curlia on turn 2 as well, and I was like, uh-oh. So I ended up roaring of the sword to my Zacian 5 times and attaching manually 4 times under like while I had stuck his Alakazam in the active, and Noah was telling me that he thought that or Duraludon, sorry, he thought I was going to go into the Zacian that turn, knock out the Duraludon, and he was going to come up with the Arceus with a Choice Belt, hit into me for 210, or Hawlucha, move the damage up with the Alakazam, knock it out with the Arceus Choice Belt, and then Volo the Arceus V-Star, or the Umbreon V-Star, so I can't win the game that way. And he was like, I hate that you can win this game this way. And I was like, yeah, I don't even know how I got here. But time gets called on Noah's turn, and I show him that I had double boss in hand. So my plan was to go boss on the Arceus that had the Choice Belt, knock it out, boss up the Umbreon, knock it out. Or the Umbreon then comes up. That's the only attacker Noah has because there's no other energy on his board. So even with an attach that turn and a potential Raihan falling up, I would be able to draw my prizes, at least 5 prizes, and be able to go into a Baby Gardevoir and try to close out the game that way with 2 shots or even like a Rod or something. Which doesn't happen. So I think I actually win that game against Noah, and I played to my outs, but a tie is a tie, and I think all 3 games were so bad setups that I will take a tie. Round 5, I go against Ian, and game 1 is like kind of interesting where Ian only sets up 1 Baxcalibur, and I chase it down. I think like at one point I'm at like 5 prizes and Ian has 2, and I chase down the Baxcalibur, um, and then I Iono Ian, and I think I remember, um, I had to one-shot like Ian's attacker, which I did with Baby Guardy. He returns the KO on Baby Guardy. I take a one-shot back, and I have to Iono and hope he doesn't find energies. Or like a way to... No, I actually ignored the Chien-Pao and took care of the 1 Frigibacks on the bench with Cresselia. And I'm just like, you're not finding the energies because you have... Like, you need to find like Raihan exactly or something. I didn't expect he played it. So that's how Ian lost game 1 because he only ever established 1 Frigiback or 1 Baxcalibur. And then game 2, Ian made a play where I remember vividly. He said like, I need to get energies this turn to attack you. And he researched away in Irida, or no, he Ultra Balled away in Irida to find another piece, and then Iono'd. And I remember asking Ian vividly after the game, like, hey, could you have just Irida this turn and like chilled, and then next turn gone for like the Iono into 6 cards and make a play? And he's like, yeah, but you would have gotten an attack off and taken something off my bench, like the Bidoof or something. And I was like, but I don't think that matters. Like, just getting the Baxcalibur up is the most important part of your deck. I did have the boss in hand for the Baxcalibur, so I would have put him in a tough spot anyway. But yeah, I think Ian did mess up that game against me. I think Chien-Pao is a terrifying matchup for Gardevoir, so I managed to squeak that out with a win. Round 6, I went against Aaron. Aaron ends up going up super, super high, like up in prize trade in game 1, and I end up making this like crazy play where I again, same situation, take out the lone Baxcalibur, and then Aaron, instead of benching a Palkia to establish the threat, because he was playing the Palkia version of Chien-Pao, benches another Frigibacks, which gives me a whole turn to take out the Frigibacks and set up my board further. And then that puts me in a position where now I'm only at 2 prizes. And so he, even if he knocks out the Cresselia, has 1 prize remaining, and I can just go into Gardevoir and win the game on a Chien-Pao. So Aaron ends up losing that because of that single play. And then game 2, his just setup is completely null and void. Like, he gets the 1 Frigibacks down turn 1, but turn 2, I just get, like, I get the current, like, the Cresselia play, and he doesn't get a second Frigibacks down, and then he doesn't get a Baxcalibur until like turn 3, and even when he does, I boss the Baxcalibur, take it out, and then he's wiped of energy on the board, and I can just take control from there. So, unfortunate for Aaron, but that does put me at 5-0-1 and puts me in a position where now I have to win 1 game to advance to the second day of the International Championships, as well as I am locked for championship points. That puts me into top 16 for North America, so that does mean I get to go to Worlds on a day 2 bye. I go up against Michael Catron, who's playing this really crazy RCS deck. I don't really know what's in it. So game 1, he opens Metacham, and I open Zacian. My start's terrible. I prize 2 Ralts, but I go attach to Zacian, attach bench, like VIP pass for 2 Ralts, and roar. And then he goes draw, concedes the game. And then game 2, I open Manaphy with a completely unplayable hand, and he sets up. And I think I like went for the Mew, and I whiffed. And then he kills the Mew on turn 2. And I concede, and then game 3 we have a game on our hands, but Michael ends up starting to brick because he doesn't get an RCS down, or he gets the RCS energy down turn 1, but nothing else. So I then go into, I get Candy Guardy turn 2, or turn 3 maybe because I'm not drawing super well, and I knock out the Flying Pika in its active, the baby, and then I boss kill the Umbreon on his bench. But what I could have done is dug a little bit deeper to find the collapsed and collapsed away my Greninja on the bench, which is like a huge mistake that I made, and then he top decks the V-Star, the RCS V-Star. So he slams the RCS V-Star. He Starbursts for Switch Boss, gets Nest Ball Umbreon attached to Umbreon, boss up my Greninja, and starts Mean Look stalling me. And I'm assuming it's going to die at a certain point because of Mean Look stall. And then eventually he hits his... like the next turn he like top decks a supporter to keep him live, which is also pretty crazy, into finding his Alakazam to then start moving the damage counters onto my bench. And then eventually he finds a double turbo, which then, after my Greninja was already at 120, he moves the 20 off or something, attaches to the Greninja, and then now he does 10 damage. And so now he can move a full 12 again. Then he retreats, and then switches back into it, with our escape ropes back into it, something like that, back into an Umbreon, and he continues the lock. So the game actually was over for me, and I was kicking myself so hard for making a simple mistake to throw that game. So that's where a mistake completely turned my tournament. But Mean Look Lock is something to be aware of. I'm not going to lose to that ever again, but it is a unfortunately punishing lesson for me. So I still have to win 1. I go up against my local buddy DJ. DJ is like a super close friend of mine, which like kind of sucks. And like both games, like I set up near perfectly, like 4 Ralts down turn 1 or 3 Ralts down turn 1. DJ like basically like doesn't even get Starbirth down like turn 2 game 1, the game he goes first, and I set up perfectly. One shot his RCS on like turn 3. I never like go greedy and like commit to an EX early, I actually spread out my Curlias. I don't go for the candy plays, like big candy plays. I like actually go for Curlias. I like thin out my hand, thin out my deck, make sure I can't get judge locked against Arctina, because that's exactly what's important. And I end up 2-0ing DJ and Arctina. So now I'm blocked into day 2. 6-1-1, I can breathe a little bit easy. But any extra points is gravy because the deck stay is very, very difficult to top 8. So I go up against PJ. PJ is playing Arc Dura. And game 1, PJ does something very similar to my other Arc Dura opponents, where he lets himself get stuck in the active. And I use that to my advantage with the Alakazam, and I win the game off the back of that, sticking something using Cresselia to move damage, and then finishing off the game with the boss's orders. And then game 2, I set up like near perfectly against PJ. And then if Guardy sets up near perfectly against any Arc deck, I think it's just very impossible for the RCS deck to win, because all I need is 3 attacks to close out the game. And as long as my like entire core is not sitting in the loss zone, I can win the game. So this puts me at 7-1-1. Feels really, really good heading into day 2. Still well know that I need to go like 5-1 or 4-0-2 to make top 8, which is like a tall order, but it feels much better than 5-0-1 bubble or go 6-0 basically. So I go up against Jackson, who's another one of my locals. Game 1, I get a perfect start, perfect setup. Turn 2, Candy Crest, like the whole play. Whole shebang feels good. Game 2 is where I make a minuscule misplay that I've discussed with friends. The board is 4-4 prizes. Jackson has Dragonite on the bench. That is powered up. He just attacked with Dragonite. I have a board, and I have 1 Psychic type basic left in my deck. I want to crest the Sableye that he has on his bench, because I already know there's a Sableye in his discard with the Psychic. So I want to make it tougher for him to Sableye me the following turn. Maybe Dragonite my Cresselia. So rather than grabbing the solo Ralts left in my deck, because I was worried, because Manaphy already had 40 damage on him, that if he gets another Sableye play off, that he would be taking 2 prizes that turn and going into the lead. I ended up getting the Zacian, thinking that he needs exactly his 1 boss, and I'm going to Iono him anyway, 2-4. And this is where I like throw the game, because he does find his boss. He bosses Zacian, goes into the lead at this point. My baby Goaty takes out another Dragonite, but I crest again, taking out like something else, because I don't have any Curlias left, so I have to have Zacian to win the game now on this Dragonite. But there's no 2 prizes for him to take now on the board, so he comes up with and his 1 boss is gone. He has rope. There's no ropes left too. I counted everything. No, he does have rope. Sorry, he has rope left. I count everything. I start using his Pokestop aggressively, because I know I have 1 Super Rod left in the deck. So I stop, I whiff. He's like, oh, you're discarding all your Pokemon. And I'm like, yeah. It doesn't matter. And so I thin and do everything as proper as I can. But the bottom card of my deck, my 60th card, ends up being the Super Rod, which ends up costing me the game. Because if I draw into the Super Rod, I can get into Zacian, retreat, and win the game on his Dragonite, because he attacked into my crest with Dragonite. I 190'd his Dragonite, and I Iono'd him as a backup to 1, and he drew the rope off the Iono to 1, which also, like, pretty fortunate for Jackson, but that was, how the cookie crumbles. I actually threw that game, because I should have just gotten the Ralts. Let the Ralts die, keep Zacian in deck. I had, like, a Fog Crystal and an Ultra Ball left as search cards, so I could have just used those, like, preemptively. Like, I could have held those knowing preemptively that Zacian becomes an out for me at any point in the game to win. So after discussing with my entire testing group, I realized that I did make the mistake in the heat of the moment, and that is how you grow as a player. Because you think, oh, getting Zacian seems correct there. Oh, he got the 1 boss he needed. He got lucky. Yes. All that is lucky, but you could have played a little bit better to be better. And that is like typically where my tournament runs. That's 2 rounds that I've told you guys now that I have lost by my own hand. 2 losses is all you can afford in international if you want a top 8. So that being said, game 3, then Jackson gets the turn 1 Greninja play on me. I'm pretty sure we're going to tie, because there's like 5 minutes left, but he gets the turn 1 Greninja. And I concede, because there's no way I can even bring this to a tie. I think it's a complete loss. And I lose 1. I go to 7-2-1. Then I go up against Aiden. And then game 1 and 2, Aiden like sets up near perfectly. I only see 1 Ralts on turn 1. Aiden gets like the turn 2 Sableye both games. So it's really hard for me to play the game with only 1 Ralts on turn 1. And that just pretty much compounds that I end up getting to 1 prize in game 1 due to like some Ionos going my way and attacking with big Gardevoirs. But I don't think I was ever in a winning position. Like, I think Aiden always had like a play on that last turn to win the game. So this knocks me out of top 8 contention now. But now I'm playing for 32 at best. I go up against Peter Petrucci. This guy is absolutely insane and an amazing player. He has, I think, top 32 at all 4 ICs this year, which is crazy considering how difficult they are. Game 1, I take against Pedro in the Gardevoir Mirror. Game 2, he takes in the Gardevoir Mirror. And Game 3, we both, I think, know how to play it correctly. Like, we're both playing it super correctly. And Game 3, I have a terrible, terrible start. And it's completely unplayable. and I concede pretty early on because I don't want to waste either of our times. Because Pedro's start is absolutely nuts. It's like double Curlia, Candy Guardy turn 2, whereas like my start was like going to 2 Curlia with like a third Raw to pass. And he just picks off a Curlia, and then like I think I owned and I had like 6 dead cards or something, and I was like, I'm just not gonna play this anymore. I don't want to play this. And there was like 5 minutes on the clock. I could have taken us to a tie, but I don't think it behooves either of us there. So I just conceded and called it a day. 0-3 on the day. Now I know in my mind if I lose one, I don't. It's going to sound conceited, but I don't need to play for top 128 points versus top 256 points. So in my mind, I'm thinking if I lose one more or tie one more, I'm going to go ahead and just exit the tournament and call it a day, because it's just not worth my time to play for those points. And I'm already like, I don't know. I feel like the luck is gone. Like the wind is out of my sails. I'm not feeling great. But I go up against Jeremy Bumgardner, and both games I basically just set up near perfectly. And like it comes out of the wire because it is Lugia single strike, but I'm able to just always get those knockouts where I need to capitalize properly. Jeremy only went in with 2 prizes for the most part, and I'm able to capitalize. Then I go against Peyton Stay, who's also playing Lugia single strike. But interesting about Peyton's list is they were playing 2 Yveltal and 2 T-Tar, which I didn't expect in one of the games, which actually ended up winning it to him. So I won game 1, he won game 2 because of the double Yveltal. And then the third game, I basically set up like near perfectly, even after having like a pretty rough start. Peyton, to his credit, did get like a good Craggle intro. He knocked over like a Candy Baby Guardy, and I was like, oh, I need that card. So I was preemptively forced to Rod it back, so I actually play the game. And then his second Crag gets the Gardevoir EX, which gave him a better advantage point to boss my Gardevoir EX the next turn and try to make a play. But I was so far ahead that I think I knocked out Lugia, knocked out a T-Tar, and I was like, if you go Yveltal, kill my bench guy, my hand already has boss in it to win the game, which is exactly what it ended up happening. So Lugia matchup was great there. And then round 15, I went up against Alexander Burton, who was playing Fusion Mew. And both games, Alexander like completely turbo bricked. Like I literally like was just going 190, 190, 190, 190 with Gardevoir, and that's how I won both games. I think Alexander like both games opened like triple fusion energy, which like does not behoove you in those matchups. Game 2, he like top decked a Judge and we were able to make it a game. But I still like set up perfectly, and I think if Gardevoir sets up against Mew, and Fusion Mew specifically, which only plays like 1, maybe 2 path, you can bust through and win the game that way. So yeah, and that puts me at a 10-4-1 record, making my first ever NAIC Day 2, finishing 49th out of almost 2,000 Masters, an incredibly impressive run. I know I could have done better given the 2 losses in round 7 and 10 that were completely in my control. 11 and 12 obviously being, I think, out of my control due to the variance, which you have to understand which losses are in your control and out of your control and how you can improve as a player. But my tournament did change when I took the loss to Michael and then the loss to Jackson. So that was where like my tournament was completely shifted. Like I don't think I fully recovered from the loss from Jackson. Like I don't think I played necessarily the best against Aiden because I was still thinking about the mistake that I made. It's hard to recover. It's hard to reset in between rounds, but these are long tournaments. These are strenuous tournaments. And that being said, it was awesome meeting so many of you this weekend. Truly feel blessed to have the support that I do. My 2023 season is over. The World Championships are coming up. Next year, I don't know what holds for me. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a different video. But thank you all. The Road to Worlds 2023 does end here. And that is my last tournament report besides the World Championships for the season. Thank you for everyone who's followed my journey. I appreciate you guys so much. I'll be back next season. And hey, Worlds isn't over yet. So hopefully I inspired your journeys. And if you enjoy the content, like and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in a future episode. Peace out, guys.